UN to make a formal request to Syria's government asking for permission to drop aid to besieged cities and villages. Joining us now, Stephen O'Brien, the United Nations Under-Secretary for Humanitarian Affairs. Thank you for being with us, sir. Are you going to ask the Syrians for permission to perform aid drops on Sunday?
The latest information is that we need to make sure that we can reach all the people who are in need, and that includes in the besieged areas. If we do not have access by wheeled convoy, then as a last resort, airdrops or making sure that we can get in by deliveries by air is what we have to do. So my colleagues in the World Food Programme have been working on an extremely detailed and effective plan, and to make sure that we can then put that into operation, we have to then put a request, a formal clearance request, into the Syrian authorities so that they can make sure that they agree to clear the skies and make them safe, so that these aircraft can be loaded with the necessary life-saving and protection supplies and medical supplies, which we can then supply to these very desperate people in besieged areas. OK,
the UK's ambassador to the UN, Matthew Rycroft, said that Syria's continued obstruction of humanitarian aid is outrageous and illegal. Speaking to reporters after the Security Council meeting this afternoon, Syria's ambassador to the UN had this to say. Let's listen in.
Humanitarian aid has never been denied by the Syrian government to any part of the country, including the restive areas and the far-to-reach areas. Of course, we have corroborated information, and just for your kind information, I would like to insist that I have been providing both your good self as media reporters and journalists, as well as the members of the Security Council, almost on a daily basis, with detailed information.
Mr. O'Brien, what do you make of what you heard there, the Syrian ambassador calling this a manufactured crisis? Are they treating your plans with contempt?
My job is to reach the people in need, and when they have life-saving and protection needs, we have to focus on the facts on the ground. It is quite clear to me, as we've been putting requests in month after month, to make sure that we can reach people, whether they're in besieged or hard-to-reach areas, or indeed anyone, anywhere across Syria who has such needs. And let's not forget there are 13.5 million people who have humanitarian needs in Syria. And we have to put in requests because we need to make sure that the safe, unimpeded access to reach those people in need, which is the question of law in any event, is given to us so that our convoys can be loaded and with security can then ride safely to reach those people in need. So, for instance, for the June plan, which we have now submitted, we have 34 requests to reach people in areas of either besiegement or hard to reach, or areas where we need cross-line convoys. And we have had a clear response to 23 of those, saying that we do have permission to go, but we'll need to then get what are called facilitation letters in respect of all those. Then we have to make sure we have supervised loading, and then we have to also make sure the security is cleared. And then there are 6 which have been given partial permission, which means either they don't agree with the quantities that we at the UN have objectively decided are needed in order to meet those people of need, and 5 have been outright refused. So we will then put in an immediate request for those 11, either partial or refused, for permission. And then there are outstanding ones from May where we were not able to get through. And in particular, there were 5 besieged areas, 3 were only partially allowed and 2 were denied altogether. And we continue to insist that we have absolutely, as a matter of law, a need to get to those people without let or hindrance.
If allowing aid into Syria is a moral, political and legal requirement, why does the UN need to ask Syria's permission?
Because, of course, you can't load a convoy and have people in a great line of trucks going from the warehouses most often in Damascus, and even though they only have to travel a few kilometres, they have to go through various checkpoints. And when these checkpoints, there may only be a rope across the road between one house and the next house, but there's a man or 2 men on the rope with guns pointed at the driver in the cab, and unless you have all the permissions and they've been pre-cleared, then there's a real risk that your driver will be shot. And therefore it is absolutely necessary for us to get permissions so we can roll the trucks. And moreover, when you go into some of these towns, you may have 6, 8 checkpoints from the Syrian government. You'll then have 3 from, say, Hezbollah, and then you'll have 6 from the local militia. We have to have negotiated agreements with all those. Otherwise, we put our convoy drivers at risk. Equally, it's the same for any ability to drop aid from the air. You have to have the clearance so that the pilots and the aircraft, in this case commercial aircraft, can get insurance, and for the pilots to comply with their rules so that they can set off and fly. That's why we have to have the clearance and we have to seek the permission. So as you can know, a security resolution doesn't get you that clearance. That has to be done by very brave people on the ground, the UN negotiating day in, day out for these permissions.
And after what you've heard from the Syrian ambassador a few moments ago, when you ask the Syrians permission, are you confident that they're going to say yes?
Well, we want to use all the channels of influence on the Syrian government. We have our direct channels. There are others who are channels through whom we go. And, of course, we very much hope that we'll always get a full and positive response from the Syrian government. When we don't, we put in the request again, and we always want to have access granted to us in full, because we don't, of course, put any of these requests in lightly. These are after intense information and research to find where the people are in need and to try and make sure that we reach them with the necessary life-saving and protection. It's the very least they deserve. This crisis has been so protracted, it's gone on for so long. If we can get into the people, such as today, we've at last reached Mir with the second convoy, this time with food items. The first one was with medical items and some extra items. We've managed to get one into Daraa, but not yet with food items, and we've got a request in to get the next one into Daraa with food items. So we will just keep on relentlessly pressing to have these permissions, and it's absolutely the right and demand of the law that we should be granted those permissions without any kind of qualification, reduction, condition, let or hindrance.
Sir, many thanks indeed for your time. Stephen O'Brien, the United Nations Under-Secretary for Humanitarian Affairs.